No, it was a serious question. I had to jam it in there. Wasn't much time. Look at what we've had leaked. We've had Trump's phone call with the president of Mexico. We had Trump's phone call now with the president of the Philippines, that oddball Duterte guy. What other phone calls? Trump, during the transition and his early days president, actual transcripts, in some cases voice recordings of Trump phone calls. All right? Now, why has there never been a leak of any evidence that Trump colluded with Russia? If they have the kind of access where they can get transcripts and audio recordings of Trump's calls with presidents of Mexico and the Philippines and where else, after all of this time, why is there no hard evidence of Trump colluding with the Russians or any of his associates? Well, the answer is obvious, because there wasn't any. But here is an ongoing problem. YouGov published the results of a poll recently, and it contains some data that nobody, I think the Media Research Center noticed this. God bless them, but nobody else has. And it is very importante. Yesterday, I spent quite a bit of time explaining the trouble the Democrats are in, and they are in trouble. They have so pushed this collusion theory. They have so pushed that the Russians hacked the election. That is a phrase. Russia hacked the election. You know what people who are not capable of critical thinking, you know what they're going to think. Knee-jerk reaction. When you say you're already a livid Democrat, you're already ticked off because Hillary lost, you're already mad at that. You hate Trump on general principles. And then Trump wins, and your friends start talking about collusion with the Russians, and then comes the very, very precise allegation that the Russians hacked the election. That's different than the Russians colluded with Trump during the hacking the election. A lot of people are going to think that means that the Russians somehow found a way to tamper with the vote. Voting machines, paper ballots, but since they don't think critically, they're not going to take it any further. They're just going to accept, because of prejudice and bias, that the Russians hacked the election. Now, the Democrats have not been pushing that, other than it's primarily been the media that has been pushing that narrative. But it's not as frequently pushed as the narrative of collusion. And so now the Democrats are walking back impeachment. Al Franken literally had to tell voters yesterday Trump's not going to be impeached this month. There are only 7 days left in this month. What must those people believe? What must they be out there anticipating? Does this mean that Trump might be impeached next month? If Franken's not going to get to it next week? So the results in the YouGov poll, ready for this? 55% of Democrats think that it is probably or definitely true that Russia hacked vote totals to get Trump elected. Folks, this is not 55% who believe that the Russians colluded with Trump. This is 55% of Democrats who believe that the Russians actually hacked voting machines and that the election was literally stolen. Who has made them believe this? It's their buddies in the mainstream media, followed by willing accomplices in the Democrat Party. There have been two memes. Russians colluded with Trump, Trump colluded with Russia, despite the claims that there's been no evidence found. That gets covered up and dwarfed by a year's worth of stories featuring countless anonymous sources, former and current high-ranking government officials. Nevertheless, every story, practically every story, if you dug deep in it, would admit that so far there's no evidence. But these Democrats never got that far. So when you've got, imagine yourself, you're the Democrat Party leadership, and you're already in a mess. Do you know that Jane Sanders, Crazy Bernie's wife, is out there praising the Iranian elections as a model for us to learn from? The Iranians elected a new president last week, Rouhani. And Crazy Bernie's wife is out there saying that's the kind of model we need to be following, the way the Iranians do elections. Now, before you go off on this, remember what happened to her husband was cheated. The Democrat Party indeed rigged the primary against her husband. She knows it, her husband knows it, and Crazy Bernie voters suspect it, and there's a lawsuit about it. There's real tampering, by the way. There's real hacking, by the way. There's real collusion happened on the Democrat side. Now, Jane Sanders is a mess. Anyway, self-contained mess. But on this, you can't really blame her. Her husband's campaign was sabotaged by her husband's opponent and Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz and the rest of the DNC. So imagine you're a Democrat. Any Democrat. You're Chuck Schumer, you're Pelosi, you're a Democrat lobbyist, you are in the drive-by media. And you have been trying to destroy Donald Trump. With who, by the way? With who have you been trying to destroy Trump? You don't need to destroy Trump in the minds of Democrats who already hate Trump. The Democrats don't need convincing that Trump is bad news. They don't need to constantly be told what a danger Trump is. Trump voters are the targets of this. The media has been trying to distance Trump voters from Trump by impugning his character and his honesty and his legitimacy and all of that. But the audience that's heard it is also Democrat-based voters. So the Democrats, thinking that their voters are far sophisticated, not to really know what's going on here, to wink and nod and be in the game. No, they're buying this. They're now 55% of Democrat voters think the Russians stole the election by hacking voting machines or whatever they think the mechanism was. Now, those people, because they believe that, they are convinced that Comey knows it. They were convinced that Sally Yates knows it. They are convinced that Mueller is going to find it. They're convinced that Eric Holder and Obama and John Brennan know it. So therefore, they are convinced that it's going to be made public in an investigation, and they are convinced that Trump may go to jail. They are convinced. They are just waiting for all of it to unfold and happen. Al Franken had to tell them it wasn't going to happen this month. This is a problem for Democrats. This isn't going to happen because that didn't happen. The Russians did not hack the election. The Russians had nothing to do with the outcome of the election. That's all on Hillary. And one day, these people are going to have to be told. One day, these people are going to figure out there isn't going to be an investigation. One day, there isn't going to be the revelation, and there isn't going to be a conviction, and there isn't going to be a frog march in handcuffs of Donald Trump to the nearest jail. There isn't going to be Donald Trump lined up before a firing squad. This isn't going to happen. And when it does, when these 55% and growing figure out that there's nothing here, what are they going to do? And I'm telling you, the Democrats are scared to death of that day. Now, YouGov, this poll that shows 55% of Democrats think that it's pretty true that Russia tampered with vote totals. They did the question back in December, too. In December, the number was 52%. Now, think about that. In December, this is still during the Trump transition. In December, 52% of Democrat voters believed the Russians tampered with the vote. Ballots that were cast were tampered with by the Russians. Last week, they did the same poll, 55%. So the number is growing. The number is expanding. Despite the Democrats, I think this poll is one of the reasons why so many Democrats are now starting to walk back this whole notion of impeachment. And now a couple more have joined the chorus and are saying not only is there not going to be any impeachment this year, there isn't going to be any impeachment, period. They're tiptoeing with it. They're whispering it. They have to do this gradually. This is like withdrawing these people off of a very, very addictive drug. They can't take them off this cold turkey, or who knows what they'll do. They're having to walk this back very, very slowly.